Rain tapped rhythmically on the foggy window of the tiny downtown diner as Ethan Cole stirred the lukewarm coffee in front of him. Dressed in a plain gray hoodie and jeans, no one would suspect he was the billionaire founder of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. But that was the point. Today, he wasn't Ethan Cole the CEO. He was just a single dad, showing up for a blind date, with his 6-year-old twins in tow. Ava sat to his left, her curly hair tucked under a pink hoodie as she scribbled stars and stick figures on a napkin. Eli sat to his right, swinging his legs under the booth while chewing the edge of a plastic straw. "Dad," he whispered, leaning close, "do we have to stay for the whole date?" Ethan smiled softly. "Just until we find out if she's nice." He glanced at the time. 2 minutes until the date. His heart pounded, not from nerves about romance, but fear of disappointment. The last few women he'd dated lit up when they learned his last name. Their warmth turned calculating. And when he tried being honest about his money from the start, it only attracted the kind of attention he didn't want. So this time, he was trying something different. Brutally honest in every way except the wealth. His dating profile had no last name, no mention of his job. Just Ethan, single dad of 2, learning to cook, lover of silly jokes and rainy mornings. It had been Claire's message, simple, sweet, with a touch of curiosity, that felt different. Still, he wasn't sure. He reached over to wipe ketchup off Ava's chin, then took a deep breath as the doorbell chimed and a gust of wind blew in a woman in a tan raincoat, soaked through but smiling. She scanned the room, eyes landing on him. Claire. No designer purse. No dramatic makeup. Just soft eyes, slightly flushed cheeks, and a nervous smile. Ethan stood to greet her. "Hi, Claire." She nodded, pulling her wet hair behind her ears. But instead of focusing on him, her eyes lit up at the twins. She knelt beside their booth. "You must be Ava and Eli," she said brightly. "I'm Claire. I brought stickers, can I join your table?" The twins looked at each other and giggled, already nodding. Ethan stared at her, caught off guard. He wasn't sure what he expected. But it definitely wasn't someone who saw his children before she saw him. And just like that, something in him quietly began to hope. Claire's entrance felt like a shift in the air, gentle, unassuming, and somehow exactly what the moment needed. Her coat was damp and clung awkwardly to her frame, her shoes squeaked with each step, and yet her smile remained unshaken. As she approached the booth, she tucked a strand of rain-soaked hair behind her ear and offered Ethan a soft, breathless, "hi," followed quickly by a warm glance at the 2 small faces staring curiously up at her. She didn't wait for a cue. Instead of giving Ethan a polite handshake or asking if she could sit, she crouched beside the twins' side of the booth, meeting them at eye level. Her voice dropped into that gentle, playful tone that only those who truly like children know how to use. "You must be Ava and Eli," she said with a bright grin, producing a small Ziploc bag from her pocket. Inside were colorful stickers, dinosaurs, stars, kittens in space helmets. "I brought these for emergency boredom situations. You two look like professionals, so I figured I'd better be prepared." Ava's eyes sparkled. "Space kitties?" Eli let out a laugh that made Ethan's chest tighten. It was rare to see him that open with strangers. Ethan watched in silent awe as Claire slid into the booth without a trace of hesitation or discomfort. She wiped her hands on a napkin and asked, "So, what are we eating? What's the house specialty here, grilled cheese or chicken tenders?" Ava giggled. "Both. But the chocolate milk is legendary." "Noted," Claire said with a wink. Then, only after making both children feel like the center of the universe, she finally turned her gaze to Ethan. "I hope it's okay that I didn't dress up," she said gently. "Rainy days call for cozy clothes and low expectations, right?" Ethan laughed, genuinely. "That's pretty much our life motto." For the first time in what felt like years, He wasn't bracing himself for the shift in tone, the questions about his work, the not-so-subtle probing into his financial situation. There was none of that with Claire. No calculation. No performance. Just presence. He studied her as she sipped her water and helped Eli peel a sticker backing. This woman, who didn't know his last name, didn't know his net worth, had walked straight into the chaos of a date with a dad and his twins, and treated it like the best invitation she'd received all week. And in that moment, Ethan realized something that both excited and terrified him. She might be exactly the kind of person he'd been searching for all along. Rain still fell steadily outside the fogged-up windows, but inside the diner, warmth bloomed between 4 mismatched plates of food and a table littered with stickers, napkin doodles, and shared smiles. Claire had ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup, comfort food for brave days, she'd said, while the twins happily munched on chicken tenders and crinkly fries. Ethan barely touched his burger. He was too busy watching a scene unfold that he hadn't dared imagine. So, Claire said between bites, sipping from her chocolate milk with a straw, "Your dad told me you two were astronauts last Halloween. Did you make your own helmets?" Ava nodded excitedly. "We used mixing bowls and covered them in foil. Daddy helped cut out holes for our faces." Claire gasped like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. "Genius. I once went as a pencil and kept poking people by accident. It was a disaster." Eli laughed so hard he snorted, nearly dropping a fry. "You were a pencil." "A number 2 pencil," she said proudly. It was a fashion tragedy. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. There was something about the way Claire spoke to his kids, as equals, not like little side characters in a grown-up story, that moved him. She asked questions, listened like their answers mattered, and never once glanced at her phone. Claire turned to Ethan, tilting her head. "You said in your profile you're learning to cook. Brave man. How's that going?" He smiled, playing the role he had committed to. "Mostly edible chaos. I've mastered 3 things, scrambled eggs, toast, and ordering pizza when both of those fail." Claire laughed, eyes crinkling. "Hey, toast is underrated. Especially when it doesn't catch fire." "I've done that too," he said with a mock grimace. "Twice." They shared a moment of laughter, and Ethan noticed how easily it came with her. How natural it felt to be fully present, no performances, no guarded hesitation. With Claire, there was no rush to impress. She didn't ask what car he drove. She didn't ask about his job title. She didn't even ask why a single dad brought his kids on a first date. She just was, engaged, curious, and unfazed by the imperfections most people tried so hard to hide. Then, a pause. Claire picked up one of Eli's napkin drawings, a spaceship with stick figures inside, and smiled thoughtfully. "You know, kids don't fake who they are. They don't pretend. That's why I love working with them. They're real." Ethan looked at her, his voice quieter now. "And that's hard to find in adults." Claire met his gaze, her smile softening. "Not if you're willing to look past the surface." He felt those words settle in his chest like an echo. She didn't know who he really was, not yet. But something about her told him it wouldn't matter when she found out. And for the first time in a long, long while, Ethan wasn't afraid of being seen. He wanted it. The rain had thinned to a drizzle by the time they stepped outside the diner, the gray sky casting a silvery sheen over the quiet street. Streetlights flickered on, bathing the wet pavement in soft orange light. Ethan held Ava's small hand while Eli clutched Claire's, skipping along the sidewalk as they walked toward the parking lot. The air smelled of wet asphalt and something else, something new. Hope, maybe. "I had so much fun," Ava chirped. "Even the chocolate milk was better, 'cause you were here, Miss Claire." Claire beamed. "Well, I don't know if I have magical chocolate milk powers, but I do try." Eli tugged her hand. "Can we see you again?" Claire looked to Ethan for permission. He gave a quiet nod, heart caught somewhere between awe and gratitude. "I'd like that," she said gently. They reached the edge of the lot, where Ethan's old, slightly dented sedan waited beneath a flickering streetlight. It wasn't a prop, he kept the car for moments just like this. Modest, reliable, invisible. He pulled out the keys and hit the unlock button, the doors responding with a tired click. Claire looked at the vehicle but didn't say a word. No raised brow, no hidden smirk. Just her usual warmth. As Ethan opened the door and lifted Ava into her booster seat, Claire bent down to help Eli climb in. That's when she noticed it. The hole in Ava's left sneaker. It wasn't massive, but noticeable enough that her pink sock peeked through, damp from a puddle she'd stepped in earlier. Claire paused, resting one hand gently on Ava's ankle. "These your favorites?" she asked softly. Ava shrugged. "They're okay. They used to light up, but now they just make squishy sounds." Claire smiled faintly, then turned to Ethan. "If you don't mind me asking, what's her size?" Ethan hesitated, caught off guard. I think she's a 10. Claire nodded. Noted. "And no pressure, but if you'd ever be okay with it. I'd love to get her a new pair. Something fun. Not out of pity, just, because I like her. A lot." Ethan looked at her, speechless. No one had ever offered something for his children without expecting something in return. Not his business partners. Not the women he had dated. Claire hadn't even known them for more than a few hours, yet she saw the need and responded without judgment. Only care. "You don't have to," he finally said, voice rough. "I know," she replied, standing up. "That's why I want to." A lump formed in his throat. He nodded, managing a smile as he closed the car door. "Thank you, Claire." She gave his arm a gentle squeeze. Good dads deserve backup sometimes. As she walked toward her rideshare at the curb, Ethan stood there for a moment, rain beating on his shoulders, heart full and breaking in the best way. She didn't know a thing about his bank account. But she had already invested in something far more valuable, his family. A week later, the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the hills and melting the chill that had lingered since that rainy afternoon. Ethan stood at the grand entrance of his private estate, an expansive property tucked discreetly behind rows of tall oaks, with sweeping views of the city skyline. It was the first time he'd ever felt nervous bringing someone here. He glanced down at his twins, who were bouncing with excitement. "Remember," he said gently, crouching to their level, "this is important to me. Just be yourselves, okay?" Ava gave him a puzzled look. "Like always?" He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Exactly." Just then, the sleek black rideshare pulled up the winding driveway, tires crunching against the gravel. Claire stepped out, wearing a floral sundress and holding a small gift bag, clearly expecting a backyard barbecue or something similarly modest. But the moment she took in the marble columns, sculpted hedges, and massive iron gate, she paused. Her brows knit, her eyes slowly lifting to meet his. "Ethan, is this your place?" He nodded, heart pounding. "Yeah. I wanted to tell you sooner, but," he sighed, "I needed to know you liked me. Not the money. Not the image. Just, me." Claire stared at him, expression unreadable. "I'm Ethan Cole," he added. "Founder of Bright Tree Technologies." Silence. Then, a breath of laughter escaped her lips. "Wait, that Ethan Cole? The one they call the billionaire ghost, because no one ever sees you in public?" "Guilty," he admitted sheepishly. Claire shook her head in disbelief. "I went on a blind date with a tech mogul and grilled him about toast and crayons." "And you were the best date I've ever had," he said, stepping closer. "Claire, I've had people chase me for what I own, what I can give. But you? You didn't care about any of that." You saw my kids first. You offered to buy Ava new shoes without even knowing if I could afford dinner. That meant more than you'll ever know. Claire looked at the twins, who now stood beside her, smiling up at her with hopeful eyes. She crouched down and pulled out the gift bag. I brought cookies, she said with a grin. I figured if I couldn't win over your dad, I might at least win you too. Ava giggled and hugged her. Eli followed with a loud, yay. Claire stood again, eyes glistening now. I don't care about the house, Ethan. Or the name. But I do care about those two kids. And the man who's raising them with his whole heart. He swallowed the lump in his throat. So, you're okay with all this? Claire stepped forward, slipping her hand into his. I didn't fall for your money. I fell for your truth. As the twins danced around them, laughter echoing across the lawn, Ethan felt something shift. For once, he wasn't being chased for his fortune. He was being chosen, for who he really was. And that, he realized, was the richest feeling in the world.